Welcome back to the channel, guys, and welcome back to another video on the FZ6 project. So in this one, what I want to do is take care of those final bits and pieces that we didn't get to on the last video. I want to get it MOT'd, I want to get it cleaned, and I want to get it all ready to go. So what we're going to do is get started. On these screws here, I've just got myself some plastic washers, and they are just going to stop any damage when we do the bolt up on the fairing there. And we have got one that goes up here as well, but I won't put that in until I've put this infill panel in here. Probably not going to do that just yet, because the other side I'm going to leave off for the minute, because that's where the rad cap is, and I want to check all round here while I'm running the bike up. Just make sure that nothing's touching, none of this cabling's touching, and just make sure that there's no water leaks or anything like that, and give everything a bit of a once over. So having these off still just gives me a clear vantage point to looking all around here at the end. I've now removed the rear caliper off the bike, so the only thing I had holding it on was just a brake hose attachment, and I just had it hooked up to one side. So we're going to look at taking this apart, giving this a bit of a once over. So I have got myself a new seal kit with a new piston and a set of pads for it as well. When we tried to remove this piston, as you can see where it's just sat for some time, there's loads of corrosion on there, and you can feel that with your finger, and you're just going to end up tearing the seal, or potentially the seal won't create a proper seal on this piston and you'll get leaks. So we just want to give this a good overhaul. So I'm just going to have a quick look and see what comes in this kit that we've got. A sticker, that's always good. So we've got a new bleed nipple. We've got the inner and outer seal that go into here. We've got a new copper washer, or pair of copper washers for the banjo bolt. We've obviously got the rubbers for the sliders here as well. And we've also got a bleed nipple cap there. Little bit of rubber assembly grease, and then the piston, as I mentioned a moment ago. So I'm going to start taking this apart. So firstly, I'm just going to pull out the pad. This is like a tension or retaining spring, just stops the pads from chattering. So now we're just going to gently look to remove these seals. So we've got our first one there. And we've got our inner one there as well. Hook those two out. That's nice and free, which is good. Just going to push this slider right the way through. Might be that it's just hooked on. So we just pop that through. We can give that a clean. And then this here. Pull that out and push that through. Get that bleed nipple out. So that is now everything off of the caliper. So what we can do is look at giving this a clean. That's the caliper now back out of the cleaner. That's turned out really quite nice. So what I think I'm going to do is, just to finish off this bit, is I'm just going to bung these threaded sections up, and then I think I'm just going to lay a bit of VHT paint over it just to make it look a bit tidier, and then we can look at rebuilding it with those bits that we've got there. A set of front brakes have now turned up for the bike, so we can unbox those. – Hopefully they're better than the set that we had on the bike. Yeah, they look fairly reasonable. I will take the caliper carriers off. I'll probably take the hoses off, give them a bit of a clean. Just check to see that the pistons haven't got any corrosion on them. Check these brake hoses over, just make sure that there's not any splits or bulges or anything like that in them. Make sure that they're all in good condition. And then just give these a wipe down. New pads for the bike as well, for the front, so they can go in. So I've managed to work these free, just gave them plenty of WD-40 and just managed to get those out. I am going to look at replacing these pins for the ones I've got, because I don't know if you can make out there, but they've all started to corrode here. They've got quite a big ridge on them there. So I'll just put my own caliper carriers in there. Just tuck those out the way over there for the minute. And the same for that side, that's all pitted and horrible. So the caliper's not going to slide very nicely up those. And that one, as you can see, that one's actually broken off. So they are no good. This is just the old piston here that I put in there just to stop any paint going in there. It's come out looking pretty nice. Just using the rubber grease that's supplied in the pack. We're just going to feed this seal in first. This is the bottom of the two. What we want to do is we just want to make sure that that seal is in the recess that it sits in, but also we want to make sure that it's not twisted in any way. That's fine. And we've got our outer seal that we're putting in. The same again for this one. So I'm just comparing this with the old piston. And we just want a bit of brake fluid on the piston itself to help that, to aid that when it goes into the caliper. That way it should just slide past the seals nicely, not cause any damage. Just pushing that down nice and evenly. That's right the way back in. So the next piece of work is going to be on the bike itself. So I've just removed this rubber bung here, the old one, and I'm just going to put this new one in there. Just applying a little bit of brake pad grease to these bits here. Got our 2 new crush washers, so we just remove both of the old ones. Just check to make sure that banjo bolt's nice and clear. I now just need to find all the torque settings for this bolt here, or pin, these two, and then the banjo bolt as well. I'm not going to worry about marking this one because there's a cap that goes over that. So you've got 30 Newton meters, 27, 22, and that one's 17. And then the cap that goes over this, that's a really high torque, this one, 3 Newton meters. I have got some grease in the threads there, so that'll pick that up when that goes in there. The bleed nipple is 6 Newton meters at the moment. I'm just going to nip that up ever so slightly. What I'm then going to do is draw the fluid using a syringe out of the master cylinder. We can top that up with some fresh fluid and then we can bleed that out. And then once we've done that, we've just got a new bleed nipple cover. It will just sit on top of there. I've now finished bleeding the brake, so we've refreshed all the fluid in there. I've tightened this up to 6 Newton meters as it recommends. I've given everything a good clean just with some brake cleaner, because if I've got brake fluid anywhere, I don't want it to damage the paintwork. So that's the same up on the reservoir and down here. I just use one of these little bleed bottles, one of these little self easy bleeders. This one's just a Draper one. So then what we can do, I have already tested it, but obviously we spin the wheel, make sure the brake's nice and free. Then we apply the brake, make sure the wheel doesn't turn. So we know that everything's okay there. Obviously it's all rocking about at the minute because I've still got the wheel loose where I need to do the chain adjustment, and I'm still waiting on the tool because I thought I had a tool for riveting the chain. I don't, it's just a chain splitter. So I've ordered a riveting tool so that I can rivet the chain. So now we can go to the front of the bike and look at putting the front brakes back together and back on. We can get those bled out and do the same checks that we've done here. So once again with these, I've just applied some brake pad grease onto the parts of the brake pad where they sit on these little metal shims on the carrier here. So that's now the pads in place. So I've just greased the caliper carrier bolts as well. I'm just doing the other side here as well, just torquing those up. So that's the caliper and the caliper carriers now tight. So I can look at getting some new copper washers for the banjo bolt, and then what I'm probably going to do is thread the brake hoses down through the top here so we can put the lever on, put the hoses in like a glove or something and just zip tie that up so we don't get any fluid on the bodywork or the fairings. Drop those down into here and then look at bolting those onto the caliper themselves. So here we have the brake lever with the hoses, and as I mentioned, I've just put some gloves on there. So I'm just going to feed this down. Just going to put this little horseshoe clamp on loosely that holds the brake master and the brake lever up in place here on the handlebars. And then there's a bracket which holds the brake hose, which is just up under the fairing here. So I'm now going to put that in. Then we've got the brake hose. There's two clamps that hold it onto the back of the fork leg. So there's one there. Also just going to mock up and loosely fit the front mudguard as well, just to make sure that everything's in place there and we're not going to catch anything or get anything mismatched. So I'm now just putting in the two back bolts for the mudguard. So you've got two front screws and then two back 8mm bolts with just a nut on the back of them. Then on the top of the mudguard there's just a plastic clip that holds the hose over the top. So we've got the master cylinder lever assembly on here. I've plugged the two wires in for the brake light switch, and then it runs down here into this clamp. So we've tightened that clamp, that's all done up. There is a plastic fitting there in the centre, which we've done. We've replaced these two. I ended up taking those screws out and I've just replaced them for some new Allen key ones. So we've got that one there, this one here, that one for the back of the mudguard. All of this lot's done up as you saw earlier. If we come round to the other side, we've got the same here. You screw, these bits are done up. So I can now uncable tie these, replace the two copper washers, and then tighten those banjo bolts up for the brake hoses, and then we can bleed the brakes. I'll just do the same around the other side and then we'll torque up the pair. Right, let me just have a look at my notes. So that's 30 Newton meters for the banjo bolt, the same as the rear. That's that one. That's that one. Do a little bit of Marquez. So it's the next morning now and I've come back and I'm just checking the feel on the brake. Last night it was feeling a bit spongy and just there was quite a lot of travel there, but I did leave it under tension. I just had a cable tie on there overnight. I've come back in this morning and it's feeling much better now. I'm going to bleed it again just to make sure there's no further air in there. I've checked for leaks. I can't see any leaks or anything like that. We've also lifted the front of the bike up slightly. We just put a ratchet strap on there, lifted it up like that, and that's allowed us to spin the wheel, press the brake, check, make sure that the brake is working and that the calipers are locking. So that's good. I have also been painting the tank, as you've seen some snippets of, and what I'm going to do now is look at refitting the fuel tank cap and the pump in the underside of the tank as well, so then we can look at getting that semi-assembled back onto the bike, and then we can get some fresh fuel in there as well. and then at some point we're going to look at running the bike up, getting it up to temperature and doing the throttle body syncing. I've also got the under tray. So we've got the under tray down on the side there. So I'm going to look at putting the under tray on. I'm still waiting for the chain riveting tool. So when that turns up, we can rivet the chain and then tighten and adjust the chain and tighten the back wheel. So we are getting really, really close. I'm really looking forward to this one. It has been an up and down, but for the most part, hopefully we're on the home stretch now. I've got a number plate for it. I've fitted that as well with some number plate screws, so that's on there. And we've also got these two infill panels as well that need to go here. I may well just leave them off for the minute because I'm going to have the tank up and down and I don't want to risk scratching anything. So I think I'll probably leave them off for the moment. Then when the bike is synced up, running nicely and ready to go for an MOT, we can then put those back in place and just do a final once over before we put them in. Just laying that down there just in case I decide to unexpectedly throw this tray onto the bottom of the ramp here and they're not going to scratch or damage it. So what I'm doing now is I'm just checking. I've got to do the other side up, but I'm just checking to make sure that the fairing's not touching anything, especially the exhaust. I have got a good vantage point in here still, so I will be able to still have a good look to make sure that we've got no leaks or anything when we are running the bike. So I have taken the fuel pump apart and given that a clean. Got a new seal on there and also just put some rubber grease on there. So I cleaned all the filter out, cleaned all of this out. There was quite a bit of sort of dirt in there, so that was well worth doing. I've washed the tank out as well and given that a clean prior to painting it, so I can just remove these bits of masking tape now. So we've got the two pipes that go onto there, and then our fuel pump sits up on the top there. So we'll give all of that surface a good clean and then just double check and clean the tank again, make sure that's all nice and clean as well. So we've now got these little rubber buffing pads. I've done all of this up, put the fuel pump in place, torque those up to 7 Newton meters and just mark them. Then we've just got 2 rubber fuel lines or overflow lines there. So they're now in place, so we can flip the tank over and put the cap in. That's now the fuel cap all in place, so we've tightened all of these and then just tucked inside the fuel cap there's just another little Allen key bolt there. I'm not going to mark these. Now we can look at putting this back onto the bike. So we've got the sender plug on there now, the fuel pump power and earth and the fuel line. There is a fuel line clip. There is this little clip that goes over the fuel line, so we need to put that on. Then we need to feed these down. I'll just start that bolt just so it holds it roughly in place. When we're pulling the tank back and forth, it's not causing us any issues. So I've managed to use the chain riveting tool to squash the chain together, but I don't think the tool that I've got unfortunately has riveted it properly. So I'm going to get the MOT station to check that, because they're also a bike workshop. So I'll get them to check that, make sure I've done that right, and they can have a look, potentially put their chain riveting tool on. Lesson learnt, you buy a cheap tool, they don't work properly, so I am going to have to buy a better one. I'll add that to the parts list, or should I say the tools list. But what I'm going to do now is just check the chain free play, get that all adjusted up and in place. So I've got plenty of slack there. So I'm just going to make sure that I wind it out evenly on the back wheel here. I'm just locking up my chain adjusters now. Okay, so we now need to torque up the axle bolt here. We also need to do the front sprocket as well. Bit of an old way of doing it, but I basically just stuck my arm underneath, put it in gear, and just held on to the rear brake there. That helped me torque that up. So there's then a locking washer, which we can fold over, then look at putting this cover on. So what I've done is I've just used a screwdriver to just gently tap behind it, just to pull it over slightly. Then I've used a set of water pump pliers just to push down on that to clamp that right up against the nut there. So that's now locked in place, so we can look at getting the sprocket cover on. That's the sprocket cover now fitted. There's just 3 little Allen key bolts. I've just snugged them up with a ratchet because this is only plastic. So that's all of that taken care of now. So as you can see, we've now got the bike out of the garage, and what we wanted to do was start looking to adjust those throttle bodies and sync all of those up. So I put the bike in the van, brought it down here, got some fuel on the way, so we had some nice clean fuel in there. We managed to check the oil level, check the coolant level, make sure everything was okay there. We were running the bike up, getting it up to temperature. We'd got all of the gauges on and got all of that sorted, so we were ready to go. We'd managed to adjust the idle, but unfortunately we weren't able to move the screws to sync the throttle bodies. So if I take you to the new set that I've got, so you can have a look what I'm talking about. So here we have the set that I've picked up for the bike to replace the ones that we've got on there, because these 4 screws here were just so badly seized in there. I tried to free them off using some penetrating oil and just being really gentle with them, tried warming it up, and I just could not get them to move. Where they're only brass fittings or brass screws, they're really soft, so they ended up just damaging the faces of them. So I've got this throttle body set, I've given this a good once over, given it a clean. I've checked to make sure that those screws are free, and also the idle screw there. So I'm going to put these on, we're going to run the bike back up to temperature, get everything set up on there so we can adjust those gauges. What I have also come across as well is I've got an indicator fault with the bike, and I think that is related to, there's a multi-plug down, just tucked down there, and I think that's causing me an issue there. So what I'm going to need to do is take a bit more of a look into that. I did get 3 out of the 4 indicators working, and then they stopped working. So 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but we'll keep going. We are going to get this one all sorted, because I need to get this thing out and on the road, especially with the weather being as good as it is. I want to make the most of it. I did grab myself another riveting tool. I managed to get this one, so we've managed to rivet the chain now. So here is the set off of the bike that I've got, and hopefully, as you can see there, those screws, and obviously this idle screw as well, are just seized and no good. That's the new set that we've got, so we're just going to swap all the vacuum lines, wiring and stuff like that off of that one. I'm just going to use this whole thing because it looks in much better condition than the one that was on the bike. Big shout out to Blue, the guy that I got these from. Really nice guy, was really helpful, really knowledgeable. So yeah, it's fantastic to get a new set of those. So I'm going to swap them over, put them back on the bike. There we go, it's finally back running, which is great. So I'm now just going to warm it all up, lift the tank up slightly. I've got a bonnet prop that I use to keep that up out the way, and then I can get the vacuum gauges back on there and get that all adjusted. So I've managed to trace the issue down to the multi-plug there. Yes, that was causing an issue with the hazard lights, so we managed to clean that and sort that out. That indicator connector down there, that was also misbehaving a little bit, so we've done the same there and got that working. Then we've taken the switch assembly to pieces. So the indicator assembly here, I've taken this all apart. I've cleaned the little brass tags inside it and then greased this mechanism here, and now that's all working, so I can put that back together. So the only thing I've now got left to sort out is the front brake. Basically the switch, when you press the front brake, you're not getting the brake light like you are with the back. That's a switch off of the other lever that I had when I bought the other caliper set, and that's not working, so we need to figure that out and see what's going on there. So we've now taken care of everything on the phaser and it is looking absolutely fantastic. Considering where we started with this thing, I'm really pleased with the outcome. We did drop it off for an MOT and we've got ourselves a pass, so now we can get out and enjoy this thing. For future videos, I am going to look at getting myself some camera equipment so I can record going on a road test once we've done this, or going for a ride once we've done projects like this. But this isn't going to be the last video for the phaser on the channel, so do stick with us to see it in future episodes. I just want to say thank you so much for watching and following along on this project. I really hope that you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.